What's going on, sci-fi fans? My name is Ben, and welcome back to the bench for another episode of Sci-Fi Wednesdays and our trench run build that we're doing here. Awesome project. I'm super excited to see how this turns out. Let's go ahead and grab our parts and get started. Now, last time I went ahead and worked on the base and the surround. Now, the surround itself needs some work, but the resin base up here at the very top, I love it. I think that's perfect. I don't need to do anything more to that. I can put that aside. The surround, however, I need to go ahead and add in a few more layers of paint because this is really rough and the coverage is terrible. So that's going to have to be done. But once that is all finished up, we can come back and we can take our resin base and glue that down. Now, speaking of my resin base, I've gotten a lot of compliments on this, so I want to say thank you so much. Also, I've gotten some awesome ideas coming from my subscribers. For example, I had one subscriber say that it would be kind of cool to go ahead and mount this like a picture and hang it from the wall and have the TIE fighters out in front of that. That would have been super cool. But unfortunately, I've got a couple of other ideas I want to go ahead and try. So we will use that idea in another build for sure. Any ideas you guys like to throw out there, if I don't end up using them here on the build, I more than likely will use them in a future build. So if you guys have ideas, by all means, shout them out. I'll see what I can do. We're going to go ahead and start working on the base surround, get that all painted up. We're going to add in some stencils. I've got some interesting ideas. I'm going to use my Cricut cutter, try to cut some stuff out. I'm going to add in some lettering, and then I'm going to go ahead and come back, paint up the stencils, and hit it with a gloss coat. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. Let's get this party started. All right, everybody, so we are back and the base is looking pretty awesome. We're going to leave that to dry off on the side. We're going to switch over here to our TIE fighters. Now, I've actually been trying to fool around with the idea of what to use to go ahead and support these from the base, and I think I've got a really good idea. We're going to go ahead and drill an opening here, kind of at a side angle, about 45-degree angle or so, and we're going to use clear sprue as their stand. That means that I don't have to buy anything extra. I already have a ton of clear sprue. I don't need huge long pieces for this. Shorter pieces will be just fine. So I'm going to go through my spares box. I'm going to pull out any of the clear plastic parts that I have left over from other kits, and I'm just going to really cut off sections of sprue. Then I'll use those, drill some holes in the bottom of the TIE fighters, get that mounted up, and then I think we'll be pretty decent to go ahead and mount them to the base. So let's go ahead and jump back into the time lapse. I want to mount up all the TIE fighters. I want to get all these holes drilled out, figure out the angles and all that good stuff. Then I want to jump into stringing up some fiber optics, which means I have to go ahead and push through each of those fiber optic cables. Then I have to work on the battery pack, get all that nicely straightened out, mount up the base, and then hopefully we'll be ready to go ahead and get our electronics all squared away. This is a lot of fun, guys. Let's keep pushing, see what we can do. Alright everybody, so we are back and we're going to go ahead and move over now to the electronics and get this all nicely soldered up. And I've had requests to show a little bit of my soldering process, so well, here we go. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is I have a battery pack here with a positive and a negative wire. That's the red and the black. The red is going to be my positive, the black is going to be my negative. What we're going to go ahead and do is throw a switch in line with the positive wire, so the red wire here. One of these leads is going to go ahead and hook on to the switch lead, and the other positive lead from the LED is going to go to the opposite end here of the switch. That's going to allow us to control the LED off and on. Now the black wire is our negative. That's going to go with the other negative wire coming off the LED, and that is about all we need to worry about doing. It's very simple, couple of soldering connections, and we're good to go. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is grab my tools, and we'll go ahead and get started. Now I have a cool little soldering station that I picked up off of Amazon. I also have some tip tinner. I've got a tip cleaner, as well as some solder, some wire strippers, and a little set of third hands. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to start off with our tip tinner, and I'm going to actually use this to kind of clean up and tin our tip, just like this here, just kind of push it down into that. And then I'm just going to rotate it around here in what looks to be steel wool, but it's not. I think it's like a copper or a brass. It is kind of steel wool-like, bear that in mind. That's going to get our tip ready to go, and then I can just go ahead and get a little bit of solder here right on the end, just like that. Turn my attention over to the leads here on the switch. And again, I'm just going to heat up the switch lead as much as I can and then take a little bit of my solder and just kind of let it flow around the area. Do the exact same thing with the other side and our switch will be ready to go ahead and solder our connections. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing here with our wires. I'm going to go ahead and pre-tin these wires so that they are ready to go. And then I'm going to throw on some shrink tubing just so I can make sure I don't have any issues with my connections. And then I can solder up the positives to the switch and the negatives to each other. And then I think we can mount the switch up. We should be good to go. Not the hardest job I've ever done, but soldering does take a little bit of time and practice, and I am not at all practiced. Now that I have that more or less ready to go, I'm going to throw some shrink tubing on here, and I'm going to solder up the positive lead onto the switch from the LED. That's the shorter wire here, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be just fine. Now I've already pre-tinned these, so it should just be a matter of placing it on that leg of the switch, take my soldering iron, a little bit of extra solder, and just kind of melt everything together. Pretty much just get that nicely secured, just like that. And I can always come back in and kind of move some solder around to make sure I've got a nice decent connection. I don't want a cold solder joint, and my buddy actually, who's well more versed in solder, told me that if the solder itself looks kind of dull, then it's probably a cold solder joint, but if it's nice and shiny, it's probably a decent decent solder joint. Not sure if that's 100% true because I don't know anything about soldering. I just kind of learn what I see and what I've been told, but it's always worked for me. I've always tried to get that nice shiny look to the solder, and so far so good. Now that that is ready to go, we're going to go ahead and solder on the other side. Go ahead and complete the positive line here. So again, just a little bit of heat. I've already got that all pre-tinned, so we are ready to go. We can just let that kind of melt together. Make sure the connections are nice and clean, and I think we're good to go. Also, make sure to always try to put on that shrink tubing before you go ahead and solder on the connections, because I've done a few of them where I've actually forgotten to put that little shrink tubing on there, and then I have to unsolder it and then shrink tube it and then resolder, and then I can go ahead and close up the tubing around it. Now we're also going to go ahead and now solder on the negative leads. So I'm going to get both of these nicely soldered up. And I honestly just twisted them together. And then I'm just going to go ahead and solder the entire wires together into one mass. Take my shrink tubing, slip it up over that, maybe trim it up just a little bit to make sure it's not going to have any issue. And I think we are done for our soldering on this project. Next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to secure all of our fiber optic tips with a little bit of super glue and a little bit of accelerator. Again, I just want to make sure the fiber optics aren't going to slip out and start sticking out above the top of the resin base. So I'm going to pull them in a little bit. I'm going to drop a little bit of glue there for it, hit it with accelerator so they're not going to go anywhere. I did also take a little bit of heat to each tip so that they kind of mushroom up a little bit so that they won't pull through all the way to the inside of the base. So that should work well. Now let's go ahead and glue our TIE fighters down with their little stands onto the base. I've already drilled out those holes as you guys saw a bit ago, so now we can use some hot glue these down, and I think we'll be ready to show you guys the TIE Fighter trench diorama. All right, everybody. So after 7 episodes here, we have finally finished our trench diorama with our TIE Fighters and our TIE Advanced. I really like how this turned out. A couple of things I would probably change if I went ahead and did this again, but you know what? I got a chance to work with resin. I got a chance to work with fiber optics, got a chance to build some model kits, and I got a chance to kind of think outside the box a bit and try some new things. Were they successful? Well, some of them were, others were not, but I am very happy with how this has turned out. So without further ado, guys, here is our diorama called The Trench with our TIE Fighters and our TIE Advanced. I have to say this is actually a really cool project. Had a lot of fun with this. Now you'll notice here we have one switch on the back which you saw me wire up, and we have another one, this little button right here. But what does this button do, you ask? Well, check it out. Let me go ahead and show you what this does. Give it a little bit of a click here. So what I did is I basically added a little bit of a sound module there, which I can put any sounds I want onto that, and I can rotate it through, and just some fun sound effects to add a little bit of extra interest to the diorama. Let's go ahead and get you a close-up here. You can see some of the details. We've got the TIE Fighters nicely hooked into place. We've got the clear sprue for the stands. I think that's a good addition. TIE Fighters are weathered down. We've got some gloss back on just the glazings so that they stand out from the rest of the model. And then as you can see, we've got the fiber optics that operate there, turn on just a little bit of light, nothing too crazy there. Let's go ahead and show you it in low light as well. Go ahead and turn off the lights. And again, we'll just flip that switch on. You can see they're just kind of randomly placed. They're not really in any sort of rhyme or reason. I just kind of drilled some holes where I thought it might look kind of cool. Maybe a bit too much light, but honestly, they're just fiber optics, so they don't really flood light anywhere. I also got an opportunity to use my Cricut cutter to make a couple of stencils. So you can see here, we've got some really cool designs here we airbrushed on. We've got the Death Star under construction, so sign of things to come. We also have some lettering right in the middle here that says The Trench in Arabesh, and we have a combination of the Imperial and the Rebel logo in one right there, airbrushed and blended, just using some Tamiya and Vallejo colors. So I'm very happy with those results. Like I said before, guys, 7 weeks here on the bench. We have finished up our TIE Fighters, and I gotta tell you, I had a lot of fun with this. I'm not 100% happy with the surround of the base. Could have used a better material, but I used what I had. I love the resin, I love the aircraft, and I got a chance to use some vinyl there from my Cricut cutter, so I am 100% happy with how it turned out. We're going to go ahead and come up with another project and hopefully jump back on the bench next week for something new. If not next week, maybe the week after. So until then, guys, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. We'll see you back here on the next episode of Sci-Fi Wednesdays for a brand new build and a fun little project. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care of yourselves, be safe, and we'll see you soon.